WAV Group, or WAV Group, I still don't know, is claiming that Zillow is becoming a policymaker. So they released an article this week saying, what happens when Zillow stops competing and starts governing? And this is brought up by Compass in their lawsuit that essentially by Zillow making these changes to the way listings are displayed, to the listing terms, that they are acting as a policeman of sorts, or that they are changing the way the game is played, that it is unfair. Like they're setting industry new rules. One of the quotes from the article says, if Zillow enforces compliance through visibility, boosting listings that follow its standards and suppressing those that don't, it effectively becomes the arbiter of participation. Why is this important? This is important because we are all imagining, what does a post-MLS world look like? What does it look like if Zillow wins in this private listings debate? Does Zillow as a platform have the right to kind of make the rules up as it goes? And one of the things in this article that it talks about is the ChatGPT integration, how they did not ask for permission to make that integration. They interpreted the IDX licensing agreement the way they wanted to, kind of like Amazon did, kind of like some other big firms have done in the past. And it's like an act first, apologize later type of program, okay? But once certain horses have left the stable, shall we say, it could be that they could kind of leave the rest of the world behind. Meaning, if they pull out of associations, right, or if they no longer really need MLSs to govern them and tell them what rules they should be abiding by, and they play by their own rules, then, they're going to exist as a nationwide MLS, and we have to play by their rules in order to get visibility on their sites. And I can totally imagine that happening. So the article suggests that the implications for MLSs and brokerages is as follows. MLSs now face a legitimacy test. If a private portal can redefine data display and access unilaterally, who governs the marketplace? Now, to be fair, just to go back to this, Zillow, in refusing to publish any listings that were once privately listed on other platforms, is disincentivizing private listings. Yes, but who was the original disincentivizer of private listings? NAR, with the clear cooperation policy. So while we're attributing quite a bit of Zillow's rule playing to Zillow, like they're playing outside the bounds, but really it's what the intention of clear cooperation was, which was everybody needs to get their listings onto the MLS within one day. Now the MLSs and NAR are backpedaling, they're doing delayed entry, they're creating new tabs, they're doing all these things to try and kind of accommodate the demand. But it might be a little too late. That's what I'm feeling anyway. And honestly, since the MLS missed the boat on creating a nationwide MLS, which people have been demanding for years, Realtor.com had the opportunity to do it. I've said it a million times. In a way, they do have control. In a way, they do. Because 85% of home buyers, supposedly, shop on Zillow when they're looking for a home. So yes, at least in one way, they definitely govern visibility, which is half the battle when it comes to listings, right? Brokerages must navigate dual compliance regimes, MLS rules versus portal rules. Interesting, indeed. And now in this post-NAR settlement world, NAR has given MLS so much more power. Now MLSs are the police state. They're acting as bodies. We're going to talk with Russ Cofano today, and he has a hypothesis on how this could go. But from my point of view, I think that the MLSs aren't structured to be able to handle enforcement. So that has always been done at an association level. And now that even the association membership is being disassembled, what does it look like? Where's the standard of code of ethics, standards of practice? MLS might have a set of rules that if Zillow decides they want to play by different rules, an agent's going to be left to figure out which rules to play by. And of course, it would be absolutely fine for them to play by each portal's or, each company's individual rules, fine, as long as they don't violate NAR rules. And that's adding a third governing body into the mix. Technology vendors risk conflicts as Zillow's integration stretch beyond traditional IDX boundaries. It's true, that IDX agreement, that agreement that allows our listings from the MLS to be showcased on aggregator websites, was completely jumped in the ChatGPT integration and could potentially be a little bit broken, it seems, at least subject to interpretation, it seems. MLSs are trying to come out with new IDX policies, amendments, and clarifications, but is it too little too late? I'm saying this again. Consumers may gain transparency, yet lose control over how listings are marketed or prioritized when the listing agent no longer has control over the listing. So does this all just lead back to a power grab? So in this scenario where we have to play by Zillow's rules to get our listings in front of the Zillow audience, which on its surface doesn't sound weird, except that it's a brokerage too, so there's a conflict of interest. You know what? I think they should just stop allowing portals like this to have their brokerage license, right? Like it just, I don't know, there's something icky about it now. It just doesn't feel right. And when you see some of the accusations from the Compazzillo website lawsuit, it's kind of like, oh my gosh, if they're really saying these things, how can agents still in good conscience partner with these people that are trying to destroy us? It's pretty crazy. They ask, you know, if you're an agent who has a problem with the ChatGPT integration, to maybe ask your MLS execs a couple of questions. Ask them, is the domain chatgpt.com Zillow's domain? Because the data license agreement says you may only display search on the domain that is yours or under your control. So that seems like a good place to start. It says ask MLS exec if it's reciprocal. I guess the question is, can our industry actually fight back against these tiny little changes that could have a huge impact? If you like this episode and you want to see more, click here for a playlist and here for the full episode.